Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of our /Entitled Parents. In today's episode, Entitled Aunt tried to barge into my room while I was changing my clothes and got her head banged against the door. EP goes to native drum circle. Tells native chief to stop the event and take off his headdress because it's traumatizing her child. Woman I babysat for when I was 13 tries getting me to babysit over a decade later. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Entitled Aunt tried to barge into my room while I was changing my clothes and got her head banged against the door. My crazy entitled aunt, whom you all know so well by now, had an annoying habit, one of her many annoying habits, to just storm in when I was changing my clothes. The door would be closed, and if it wasn't locked she would just let herself in. My protests that I may be in a state of undress fell on deaf ears, as did any insistence that she knock before entrance, like a civilized human being. The following incidents happened when I was either 18 or 19. Aunt and her husband were over for a visit. I was in my room, changing my clothes. My bedroom door had a small defect, it wouldn't lock properly. So anytime it was closed, my dad, stepmom and stepbrother would either knock or ask if they could come in. Not entitled aunt, of course. She considered herself above such frivolous courtesies. She could come into rooms as and we she saw fit, and mere mortals would just have to live with it. Unfortunately for her, this mere mortal had had enough of her privacy being invaded. My top was off when I heard the door begin to creak open. I yelled, "I'm changing. Wait outside." As expected, Aunt didn't listen and was about to stick her head in when I swiftly reached the door, pulled it back a little and slammed it hard into Aunt's thick skull. Not enough to crack her skull, but enough to hurt. Aunt let out a howl that instantly brought a smile to my face. She went downstairs whining. I followed. She yelled at my dad about what I had done. My dad and uncle, Aunt's husband, were drinking at the time and were uncharacteristically chilled. Dad just looked at her, then looked at me and said something like, "Yeah, don't do that." My uncle just burst out laughing, as if his wife getting her head banged was the funniest thing he had ever heard. Such dismissal of her grievances was too much to bear for my aunt. She demanded that they leave immediately. Uncle told her he was in no condition to drive. Besides, he and my dad were going to watch a cricket match, so leaving was out of the question. Aunt dialed my cousin's number, believing wholeheartedly that her son would come to her aid. But judging from her end of the conversation, cousin was out with his friends and wasn't going to drive all the way over to deal with her stupid ass, and why couldn't she just stop getting into unnecessary squabbles? Aunt had no options left. She just sat down on the couch while holding against her head the ice pack my stepmom had brought for her. Her anger was boiling over but was completely ignored by my happy dad and uncle. It was a lovely evening. I'd say hopefully she'll remember that bonk to the head next time she wants to go barging in, but she likely won't. Only a matter of time before she walks in on something she really doesn't want to see. She wants to see everything for the humiliation factor. Why on earth would a visitor ever need to enter someone else's room? Your dad's response was brilliant. It really was. He sounded like he just wanted Aunt to go away so he and uncle could drink and watch cricket in peace. I give you total props. I would have done the same thing or put something in front of the door so EA won't be able to open the door. Let's be honest, I would have let her see my never-blinking flesh eye in a way she could never forget. But I'm not ashamed of things like this. Why do you keep locking your bedroom door? My brother asks, after he tries to open the door without knocking first. Why do you keep locking your bedroom door? My dad asks after he tries to open the door without knocking first. Why do you keep locking your bedroom door? My mom asks after she tries to open the door without knocking first. A good rubber doorstop hammered into place with a rubber mallet may help by some time if this hasn't taught her a permanent lesson. EP goes to native drum circle. tells native chief to stop the event and take off his headdress because it's traumatizing her child. Background: so when my little brother was in Boy Scouts, he had this best friend named Max. Max was cool, but his parents are horrid. They are racist, ignorant, and entitled. Sadly, they also ran the local Boy Scouts. So one day the Boy Scouts have an outing. We went to the local natives reserve. I often tagged along since my mom and entitled parents are friends. That day the natives were holding a really fun drum circle / coming of age ceremony. If some of you have never gone, it's basically this. People singing, banging drums, big fire, all in all a good time. The natives start by doing the coming of age ceremony. At this ceremony, the people coming of age are given chewing tobacco. Immediately EPs start yelling about how it was disgusting and young people should not be given tobacco. Meanwhile, they always give their much younger kids alcohol. Next, the natives start singing and dancing. It's beautiful, but EP does not think so. Entitled mother starts screaming that the dancing was too savage, terrifying. Then she actually gets up and walks through the circle up to the chief. She is stopped by a nice young man who asks her to sit down. She ignored him and her eyes narrow at the chief. "You need to stop all this," she waves her hands. "It's scaring my kid. You are traumatizing him. This is inappropriate for kids. Take off that silly costume. Like you brought the 20 kids here. They did not invite you. Also, I'm sitting next to my younger brother and Max. They are both enjoying themselves and taking about Egyptian pyramids." The chief rolls his eyes and say nothing. The nice man asks her again to sit down. She starts to scream again but notices the many disapproving eyes on her. It was not just the Boy Scouts visiting the event but lots of the local community. She walks back and sits down steaming. The Boy Scouts never went back, and in a couple years the entitled parents were kicked out of Boy Scouts for cheating and emotionally abusing the kids. It's a shame that entitled lady ruined the experience for future groups of Boy Scouts. Don't worry, she and her husband were soon fired from Boy Scouts. Also, we were lucky growing up. We grew up near a large native population and Canada's largest canoe museum. So growing up we had lots of positive exposure. It's disgusting that she ruined those young men's coming of age ceremonies. They will never get that back. As part Native American, that's just wrong. People have their own way of doing things, and it's not anyone's place to tell them that they're horrible. Right. Like the nerve of some people. Woman I babysat for when I was 13 tries getting me to babysit over a decade later. So there was a neighbor we had when I was in middle school and I used to babysit for her. She was a nice enough lady and she had an 8-year-old at the time. I would just go over to her house with him after school for a few hours for some extra money. She eventually got different hours at her job, I think. Maybe it was another reason, but either way she didn't need me to babysit anymore after like 6 months or so. We moved like a year later and I haven't really thought about her since. I'm now almost 25. I have my own house and work a 9 to 5. I got on Facebook like 2 weeks ago. I don't have the app, I just check on my computer every once in a while, and I had a message from the woman I babysat for. Her message was basically, "It's been so long. How are you doing? You used to babysit my son years ago when you lived down the street. My son actually had his own baby earlier this year. I'd love for you to meet her. We actually could use someone to watch her Wednesday through Friday before my son and I get home from work. You were great with my son, you were the first person I thought of." I was so confused by this message. I babysat her son for maybe 6 months over a decade ago, and she wants me to come and babysit her infant granddaughter now? I was the first person she thought of? LOL. I messaged her back and essentially said, "It's good to hear from you. That's lovely that _____ had a daughter. She looks so cute in your pic. Unfortunately, I'm not interested in watching her, I'm sorry. I work until 5 and would be unable to anyways. But I hope you find someone." So it's been 2 weeks since this and I've gotten, no joke, 10 more messages from her begging me to babysit her granddaughter. I barely know these people and she will not stop asking me. She even asked me to change my work schedule so I'd be able to, offering me $10 an hour to watch her. I am about to just block her, but I could not believe how strange this was and could not believe the request she was trying to make. Oh, I found OP's Facebook account. It has been 10 years since I've seen her, but I bet that sweet teenager would like to earn some extra money babysitting again. Not saying this is what went through her mind, but it is amazing to me how some people think that a person will stay as a perpetual teenager throughout their life without realizing that, hey, people do grow up and have their own lives. I honestly wonder if the lady is stuck in the past for some reason, like a memory or dementia issue. Block this crazy woman. I mean, why isn't the parent finding childcare? And you know it's a crazy situation when dad has custody and lives with granny. I sent her a final message today telling her I am not going to babysit for her and would not be changing my mind. If she asks me again, I'm definitely blocking her, lol. The situation is so weird. I'd simply reply, I'm not a high school kid after pocket money like you remember. Just as much as your child grew up and got his own adult life, so did I. And leave it at that. Edit, on second thoughts, it might be worth forwarding all this to her son/daughter-in-law if you can see them. I wonder if they know ML's essentially trying to hand her grandkid over to someone not qualified, uninsured, without proper pay and that she barely knows? $10 an hour? I thought you were going to say some over-the-top amount, but isn't that pretty average? That is really weird. I'd like to know why she's so desperate for you to watch the child. Something sounds off with the whole thing. You're essentially a stranger at this point. I would never ask a stranger to come into my home to watch my baby. This sounds like something that could be scripted into one of those creepy Lifetime movies. I was floored when she told me how much she'd pay me, lol. I was already so confused, but why the hell would I give up hours at my well-paying job for a $10 an hour babysitting gig? The whole thing is so weird, I still don't know what to make of it, lol. Well, it's just inconsiderate, isn't it? You can't get teenagers to do anything when more than a decade's passed and they've moved out. She'll have to have a talk with your parents and head teacher about this, mark my words. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.